work at the Irvine Spectrum, and we've got an audience online as well. So thank you for watching from wherever you are. For those who don't know, my name is Tyler Russell McCusker. I am a former radio pro, and I'm the CEO and founder of Snippet, the short podcast platform. Snippet creates podcasts that are always 20 minutes or less with excellent production quality, unique hosts, and a flow that respects your available time. We've got several of those hosts with us today. I'm going to introduce them in a moment, but I also want to say thank you to my co-founders of this company. One of them is here in attendance. That's Steph Weaver-Weinberg, who's our Chief Production Officer. And we've also got our marketing advisor, Jeff Roach, who's watching online. And my wife happens to be here as well. All good CEOs and people and humans must thank their wives for originating an idea, and it was Monica's idea to do short podcasts in the first place. I think that's the first time I've admitted that. Thank you, Monica, for your wonderful contribution. And thank you very much to WeWork, to Kirsten and Emily and Daniel and the team here. Again, we're at WeWork Irvine Spectrum. They allowed us to host this seminar, and I understand that it is the first post-COVID event that we've had, at least at this location. So that's really cool. And finally, Kent Speakman and the team at Connect, who are streaming this online. Thank you guys very much. Again, snippet.fm is where you can watch this online afterwards. So I'm very pleased to do this panel today. We're going to introduce our audience to tips and tricks that make you a great host, make you a great interviewer, a great producer, and ultimately a successful podcaster. There's 5 primary topics we're going to talk about. We'll talk about the concept of your show, guests and interviewing, music and podcasts, structuring your show, and finally marketing your show and hopefully making it successful. So let me introduce you to the people who are going to teach you all about that, our extremely talented and diverse panel, not in the order that I am going to introduce them, but nonetheless, we've got Slim Jim Phantom. He's the drummer of the legendary band Stray Cats, host on Sirius XM's Underground Garage, and the host of Rockabilly Confidential on Snippet Network. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Tyler. Hi, everybody.
He's the guy who's dressed like a rock star because he is the only rock star on the panel. So thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And then we've got Ariel Tweto. She's a Discovery Channel star on the show Flying Wild Alaska, IMAX on Into America's Wild, and the host of our new show In the Cockpit on Snippet. Ariel, hello.
Hi.
We've got Bruce Rave with us. He's a Capitol Records A&R legend. He's responsible for the management and discovery of some of the biggest hits you've heard of modern times. He's the host of Rave's Indie Radar on Snippet. Say hello, Bruce.
Hello, great to be here. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you, Bruce. And finally, Jonathan Katz. He's a film partner manager at Hulu, the founder of the piano rock band The Late Nights, and our story advisor at Snippet. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, Tyler. Great to see you again.
All right, so we're going to dive right in and start by talking about coming up with a great show idea. So I'm going to throw some statistics at you that are kind of staggering about podcasting. So right now, there are 2 million podcasts in existence, which equates to about 48 million episodes of podcasts. 3 years ago, there were only 500,000 podcasts. 78% of people are aware of what a podcast is today, which is also up 64% from 3 years ago. Now, if you compare that to YouTube, there are 34 million YouTube channels. So we are still a large way away from the potential of what podcasting can be. There's still massive opportunity and growth to be had in podcasting. But you need a topic, an idea that will stand out, because already there's pretty much a podcast for everything. So we're going to discuss coming up with a show idea from scratch, and hopefully one that will stand out and rise above the rest of podcasts that are similar. So, Jim, the first question's for you, sir.
Yeah.
Your show, Rockabilly Confidential, includes stories and adventures about encounters that you've had in your rock and roll life. And not everybody's past is going to be as exciting as yours. But how do you suggest prospective podcasters or a content creator of any kind utilize what happens in their own lives, like you have, and turn it into potentially a great show?
I think the trick to that, Tyler, is to have the experience. And it doesn't have to be generated by fame in any way. I think that every adventure is unique to the person experiencing it at that moment. You and I were in the parking lot. We saw a fantastic car. That's the guy that has the surf shop. And he's got a shop that's right down there. And right behind the surf shop is where the pro surfer goes. that becomes a story. Your own experience is happening as you're experiencing it. So it doesn't all have to be a story from the past. The past, on the way here, there was some adventurous things that happened. Fantastic guy came to my house. He picked me up, had a Tesla. It was really great experience. So that's the new show. That's it. It's constantly ongoing.
And would you encourage people, and I feel like I get this from listening to your show, you're kind of a yes man in that you allow yourself to go on experiences and have adventures that a lot of people might be like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm busy tonight, or I'm busy this weekend. You allow yourself to go out of your way to live life to a very full way. You happen to also be famous. But even if you're not, right, would you suggest people just be open to that sort of thing happening?
Positively, Tyler. I think you have to do the thing for it to happen in the first place. Everything started with wanting to play rockabilly music, which was different. This is 1979 in New York. And then with the Stray Cats, we went to England. You have to, and then, okay, we'll try this one, we'll do that one. You don't know until you've done it. And I think to have no as your default will not be a success in any way. Then it's from experience that you learn which kind of yes and how far the yes is. But I do believe that you have to start with yes.
Yeah. Ariel, you've been involved in a ton of pilots and content ideas, and you're always trying to make the next thing, and you're traveling all over the world filming things. What separates the good ideas from the bad ideas? And do you know from the beginning, okay, this one's a winner?
Is this working? Yeah. So but when you first said that, I was like, you've been involved with a ton of pilots. I was like, that was an assumption. Like, I was like, no.
No pun intended.
No. So I think, so I'll just speak for my whole experience. I think the shows that have been successful for me is the ones that I was like authentically and genuinely interested in. Because if I'm not an actress, I'm probably the worst actress out there. I've tried and auditioned and didn't go well. But when I play myself and when I could just get out there and have fun, I think it shows on camera. And so the pilots that I've done and that have actually like done well are the ones where I'm just genuinely excited to be there. And like mountain biking or surfing or running or exploring new places and seeing new things and learning about new cultures and like having like a genuine fun experiences that it just shows on camera. And I think the audience feels it when you're not acting. Cause like if I'm having a blast out there, if I'm screwing up and like messing up and then learning and then getting back out there, I think it's a lot more entertaining than me trying to memorize a script or like host a show. Cause I don't think that's my specialty. I just like, if you throw me like fish out of the water, that's, I think, like when I do my best. And so, yeah, I just think those are the best shows for me. And it's just so much more fun when you're actually interested in the subject and the content. And so I hope that made sense.
Well, and if I can just put you on the spot a little further about your new podcast, which we're still fleshing out a little bit, but in a way, it combines a lot of your interests that you're naturally already invested in and passionate about: flying, travel, and I would say making people vulnerable and making people open up to you. So do you want to talk a little bit about how your podcast potentially combines all of those ideas?
Yeah, and it's nice though because it is fun having ideas because we've been talking about this for a while, like in the cockpit, and now it's sort of evolving because I'll be super honest, like we've been trying to make the show happen, and we got like a flight simulator, and I took him on a ride in the simulator. It was so fun. I like landed on a mesa in the Grand Canyon, and we were like, oh my God, we're gonna crash, but we didn't. Yeah. And so we were trying to flesh out this idea of like me interviewing him while I'm flying a flight simulator and like not dying. But I don't know.
It was a difficult show.
It was a really difficult show. But now we're trying to, I guess, make it a little simpler because simpler is always better. But
there is a lesson in the development of your podcast that it does not need to be overly complex.
Yeah.
It just needs to be a really nice idea that resonates with something you're already passionate about. Yeah. And bigger is not always better. You don't need the perfect equipment. You don't need the ultimate setup. You don't need all that stuff.
Yeah.
You just need a good idea and a good host.
Yeah, and again, like I love flying, but then it's not my biggest passion. Like, I'm so passionate about learning about other people and like getting them to open up, because I love everyone has a story, and a story that's universal and that you could relate to. And it's my favorite thing is to like sit by someone and then get them to like spill their guts to you. I'm just like, ooh, I got you to say something. And so I love like just asking the questions and getting them to like, yeah, be vulnerable and open up, and then teach like everyone. You would get a random Joe from the street, and I guarantee you, if you talk to him and are genuinely curious about their lives, you would learn something from them, and like your audience would learn from some universal like truth that they just told you. Yeah. And so, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, Bruce. On your show and in general, you dedicate your life to finding the newest and best indie rock tracks. You love breaking things before anybody else. So how important is it to be like first to market with something, be it a song, an idea, a show topic? You do it every week on your show. So how important is that?
I love it when it happens, because it's such a good feeling to believe in something and then see the rest of whatever the world is, whatever the musical category is, to see it blow up. It's an incredible feeling. At the same time, though, when it comes to a program, the most important thing for me is the consistency. It's the sound of the show. So if it means that maybe I'm not first, but I feel something should be on there, I'm going to run with it. I'm not going to, it's a new music program, so I'm not going to play something from half a year ago, right? But when I can do it, and from time to time, of course, it does happen, it's a great feeling.
Yeah.
I don't know, frankly, I don't know how important it is to the audience. I think what's most important to the audience, and what we're all doing in our respective ways, is are we giving them something that they can't find elsewhere that makes it special?
All right, one more question on the topic of the concept, and then we'll move on. Jonathan, hello. You have a degree in screenwriting. You're involved with films that show up on Hulu, on the platform Hulu, and you're also in charge of story selection and editing here at Snippet. So in terms of producing an audio drama, which is a format that originated a very long time ago at the beginning of radio and has sort of made a glorious return in podcasting, how can you spot a good script, and how can you be sure or hope that it will be successful?
The main part of the answer comes back to what I think everyone here is alluding to, which is authenticity. When there's a creator of any type of art, really, and you can see their unique self, their unique story within the art they're making, in my case, it would be scripts for podcasts, it gets you in a way that other things might not. The way that she likes to get people to spill their guts to them in conversation, I want to see someone spilling their guts in a script. You become extremely attached to those characters. You become extremely attached to those stories when you feel it doesn't necessarily have to be real in terms of nonfiction. It has to be real in terms of human. So whether or not you read something and go, that's going to work, or that isn't going to work, I don't know. The audience will tell you every time if you were right or wrong. You have to give it your best guess based on what you're experiencing from that script, song, art, so be it.
Awesome, you guys. Keyword from topic one, whether you're interviewing, spotting a script, playing a song, telling a story, be your authentic self and have authenticity in what you're doing. All right, topic two is guests and interviewing, and specifically interview skills. At the end of this topic, we're going to talk about some of the rules of interviewing, if you will. Pretty much everybody we all know, everybody in the audience has a friend who wants to start a podcast or has started a podcast and have some great people lined up they could talk to on the podcast. We hear that all the time. I know so-and-so, they'll come on my podcast. Of course, just knowing some great guests does not make a podcast. You need to know how to talk to them as an interviewer and how to structure your conversation in a good, easy to follow show. At Snippet, we don't believe in spontaneous, meandering conversations. That's why all of our shows are short. So hosting a podcast with a guest is not the same thing as having a conversation with a friend. It's not as natural or conversational, if you will. Good interviewing takes training and practice. I don't think there's such a thing as a bad guest. I think there's only a bad interviewer. A lot of people complain like, my guest didn't have anything to say. You didn't ask them the right questions is actually the true thing. So with that in mind, we'll start with Ariel. On TV shows, in movies, and in your travels around the world, you meet people all the time. We talked about this a little bit. You have an uncanny ability to disarm people and make them comfortable and spill their guts, as you said. How do you do that? You talked about that you do that, but how do you do that?
It's such a hard question because I haven't done like a big research thing on how I do it. But for me, I think it's sort of being self-deprecating, or I make fun of myself all the time, and I think that like by sharing your failures and your like weaknesses and being vulnerable, it makes them just be like, oh, it's like she screws up all the time too, or like I don't like judging people. And so I don't know, I just feel like if you're like curious about people, if you're genuinely curious about someone, and if you like just it's so hard, but I don't really know what I do. I really love people. And I think I keep saying, like, I think everyone has a story to tell. And I think if you ask the right questions, and if you don't over plan in your head, and if you like actually listen, then the right questions will come. And I think during COVID, I read this book called Wait What? The 5 Essential Questions to like asking good questions. I was freaking out during COVID. I was like, oh my God, what if I lose what if I don't know how to talk to people after this whole thing? So I read this book, and it was so good. I recommend it to everyone. It's called Wait What? And so the questions are, one is, wait, what? And then the other one is like, I wonder why, or I wonder if. And then can't we just begin? And then how can I help, and what truly matters? And I've been playing with those questions a lot when you're just talking to people and you're constantly asking like, wait, what did you just say? Or I wonder if you did this, if this would have changed your like relationship with that person. Or like, can't you just like go for a walk? I don't know, there's all this stuff, but those 5 questions actually sort of help make a difference in my just day-to-day conversations with people. And so that's helped me a little bit. But yeah, I just don't know. Back to the original questions, I just think if you really listen and talk less, especially if you're interviewing, like don't talk that much. Just like your purpose is to let your interviewer shine. Like, I want to make them look awesome. I want to get them comfortable. I want to let them be rock stars for a hot second. And so it's like, shut your mouth, listen. Like, what is the whole saying? You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Like, listen and let them talk. And I'm going to shut up now.
On that note, all right, next to Bruce. How much preparation do you do for an interview? You've interviewed some big stars. I heard you interview Weird Al just a couple months ago, excellently on KXFM. How much preparation do you do, and how much of it is off the cuff? And how important is it to allow yourself to deviate and go somewhere else with a conversation?
Of course, I don't know going into an interview, probably none of us do, exactly where it's going to go. So I do prepare. I typically have more questions than I get to. It depends. How much is the interviewee going to talk, right? But I believe walking into it with a band, no matter what their level, they want to see that person who's interviewing them knows about them, right? One of the most frustrating things in the world, probably when you guys were coming up, Jem, or any of you, right, is when someone has no idea, and you know right away that person has no clue what you're about. They're just in there asking vanilla questions. So as a result, I come in, I'm very prepared. I only interview people I'm very passionate about, for one thing, because I'm not a good poker player. So when I'm in that room, they can see that I really want to be there. I really want to talk to them. And I don't interview that many people for that reason. You're a great interviewer, by the way, Tyler. I've heard a bunch of yours. So I do. I come in with a lot of questions, and then it comes down to got to roll with it, right? And like you were saying, Ariel, got to be a good listener and just kind of run with it. Now, one thing I do, it's a lot of work, but I do a lot of post-production. It's not live on the air, as you do, for example, with a lot of your stuff. So I may have that artist talking for 20 or 25 minutes, but the whole segment's going to be that, and I might have 3 songs in it. Well, now on Snippet, it'll be 20 minutes or less when I have maybe a bonus interview episode. So I do a lot of editing because gotta not only show the artist in the best possible light, gotta hold the audience.
I want to sum up the topic of interviewing with 5 rules that admittedly I made up, but they're really good. Okay, here are the 5 rules of interviewing, according to me. Don't talk about yourself. That's rule 1. You touched on this. The interview is about the guest. And as soon as you start saying, relating to somebody, like you might in a regular conversation with somebody, that's when the interview goes awry. Because how do you recover from that? How do you get to the next topic? Because the interview is not about you. And in a normal conversation, the other person might say, oh, cool, what happened then? But that's not what's going on. You're supposed to keep talking to them. So rule 1 is don't talk about yourself. Don't even use the word I in an interview. Always talk about your subject. Actually ask a question. This is a big one. You hear this a lot in bad interviews where you simply make a statement like so you're in a band, not a question. And you're wanting the person to talk about their band, but it doesn't actually get them anywhere. This is a weak example, but what was it like to be in that band is at least a question that they can answer. So never phrase a statement. Have a question mark at the end. Avoid conversation fillers and conversation starters. How are you? How was your day? That sort of thing are unnecessary and take you in an awkward direction that's hard to recover from. This is especially at the beginning of an interview. Number 4 is start with a list of prepared questions like you touched on, but be prepared to rip them up if necessary. One of my favorite interviewers who's no longer on TV in the same capacity was Craig Ferguson on The Late Late Show. And his shtick was when he had a sheet to interview guests, and he would rip it up and throw it away before he started the interview as if to say, this doesn't matter. It matters a little bit. You want to be prepared, but you want to be prepared to deviate. And finally, if your guest does say something interesting, don't ignore it. Go there with them. And don't leave something interesting they said unasked to. Don't just go to your next question. Make sure you follow up with them on something that they said. Those are the 5 rules of interviewing. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, topic number 3. We've got some very accomplished music people on this panel, and we're going to talk about music in shows, particularly in podcasting. About 6 months ago, there was a new loophole, if you will, that was introduced in podcasting where licensed music finally became allowed. Up until this point, licensed music has been taken down in all podcasts by a variety of algorithms. But now if you host your show exclusively on Spotify, you can include licensed music as long as that show is played through the Spotify application. I believe this is a bit of a game changer, and at Snippet, that's why we've launched 3 music shows, Rockabilly Confidential, Rave's Indie Radar, and Record Roadmap, which I host, which are all ours, by the way. So let's talk about including licensed music and license-free music in your podcast. And let me clarify a myth, too, because people think you can legally play a few seconds of a song or less than 5 seconds of a song in a podcast. You cannot do that. That still is against copyright law, and you can't even play even a second of a song without it being a copyright violation, and algorithms are catching up, and they will catch that sort of thing. So, with that in mind, let's talk about the impact of this. So I'm going to start with you again, Bruce, if you don't mind. You're a longtime professional in the music industry, working at Capitol Records for a long time. What do you expect the impact to be of this new rule where you can include licensed music in podcasting? And I will add, if you could touch on the pros and cons of maybe being only on Spotify, and throw a little statistic at you. Spotify just surpassed Apple Podcasts as the primary podcast listening software at 28.5 million listeners.
That's good to know. Well, let's start with the coffee cup being half full, right? I think it's just great that this happened 6 months ago, because it's opened up a whole avenue. And Tyler and I were doing some research when we first started talking about my kind of show. And what we found was that there weren't a lot of just pure music shows that were in podcast form. They're getting to be more, but I think it's really going to be the beginning of a much larger wave, because other people are going to see what's going on with podcasts. Apple probably doesn't want to be number 2. Right? So Apple is probably, I think it's only a matter of time before the other platforms jump in. Now, they may have their own rules, but this is just, it's great for music. I think it's just great for the whole medium.
Yeah. Jim, we'll kind of talk about both podcasting and radio with you because you are, of course, a host on Sirius XM. You know the joys of what it feels like to be a free-form radio DJ in modern times, which is few and far between. So how important is it that we still have live humans talking to an audience in whatever medium and playing songs for them? And how does today's landscape in broadcast compare to when your band was coming up in the 80s? Is it still possible for radio and podcasting to make an impact for a band like it was back in the day?
I think that radio play is always going to be important because you have to hear the song and however it gets out there. I think it's awesome now that there's so many platforms and to be exposed in as many different formats. So I think it's very important. And coming up, when we came up, you had to go, and Bruce would know this, you had to go to the station, right? Go there, do the interview, watch the clock, get to the sound check, I think it's better now. And I think that there's more time to concentrate on other things now, and that it's there all the time, and the importance of it will never go away. That, I think, has remained the same always. You have to get the music to the people. So in the many ways that you can do that, bring them all on. More the merrier, I think.
And in Spotify, obviously, for many years now, you've been able to listen to music, for free on Spotify. But now, with this addition in podcasting, DJs can present the music. Do you think that's stronger? Do people still care? Do they want the music to be presented by people rather than just picked for them by an algorithm?
I think it's very important that there is a messenger for the music. I've always thought that, and I think a DJ, VJ, is very important because you're starting with a great thing in the first place. In my case, I started with Eddie Cochran and Chuck Berry and Little Richard and Carl Perkins and Buddy Holly and John Lennon and George Harrison. However you want, you're starting with that. And I think sharing your experience and what it means to you is very attractive to everyone still. I listen to every channel just about, and I love hearing the effect. Play a Buddy Holly song for 5 different people and hear their feelings on it. And I think it's very important. And to be a ringleader and to open the forum and to be the the guy, let's get the DJ, I'm all for it. It's very important, always.
And finally, we'll talk about producing original music for shows, and we'll turn to you, Jonathan. So we'll talk about the scripted genre again. You're a musician and composer yourself, and also I want to shout out one more person in the audience. We have Jonathan Rock here as well, who made all the original music on the Snippet platform, and you contribute as well to the story of Conundrum of Cora Bay. So that is a really cool, mysterious, tone-setting song that's composed by Jonathan Rock. So how important is that song to set the stage in Cora, and how can prospective podcasters go about producing or selecting their own theme music for their various shows?
Yes, the Cora Bay music is fantastic, so big shout out to J-Rock. One thing that people don't realize when they watch a movie or a TV show is just how much the sound is actually creating the world. Think about the sound of a lightsaber or something like that. The music that comes along with any period of time or the mood of a character or the life of a character helps to communicate deep within you where you are, what to feel, what's going on. So the music, it's a little bit trite, but is a character as well. And you have, being able to use actual songs like you're talking about or composing your own lets you find a different avenue inside of your audience to tell them the story that you want them to be told, that you want to tell them. Whatever the grammar of that sentence is what I'm trying to say. It is an invaluable tool to be able to tell your story, to set the time, set the place, set the mood.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Okay, our fourth topic is about structuring your show for success. This has to do with not just having an idea and then starting to talk. That's also not enough to make a podcast. You need some structure, you need some segments, you need some plan and strategy for your show. At Snippet, we believe that involves the show being short, 65% of podcast listeners complain that podcasts are too long. 35% of them speed up the show, listening it twice as fast or even more on their various devices. So with that in mind, we create shows that are short, get straight to the point, and dive right into the engrossing content. So with this, you got to have a structure. You want it to be broken up into segments or features that an audience can follow along with and expect. So, Ariel, what are some what are some segments or games or features that you've considered doing on your show? What has worked for you in the past on various shows or projects you've been involved with? How important is that for your guest and for the listener?
So for the one we were creating in the Cockpit, we wanted, well, it was almost like Jerry Seinfeld's Getting Coffee with Comedians. So that's the hardest title to say. Something
Comedians in cars getting coffee. Yeah.
But I wanted to do, like, in my vision, like as we were flying, I wanted to do like road trip games. I just love games, and I feel like games and like stupid questions get people out of their comfort, or like they get them relaxed and fun. So we were thinking of doing road trip games. And then I like, some people really disagree with this, but just simple questions like, I don't know, what is your favorite color? But you ask, and why? So mine would be like, I love orange, and why? It's like, it was my dad's favorite color. And then you could like get some just to like open up a little bit more. And so I always have like, I have a list of like 56 questions, like, if you could talk to your pet, what kind of questions would you ask your pet? But just those already like sort of stupid questions, it just gets people rolling. So I use that a lot. And then I have another, like, popping bubbles is another idea that I have for a podcast. Like, I feel like all of us live in our own little bubble. We're scared to leave our village or to try new things or to talk to people that are different from us or look different from us or believe in different politics or religions. And I just feel like if we pop those bubbles, then people would be happier and healthier. And so that was another like idea I had for a podcast. And we've talked about this, where I just feel like having a conversation, everyone, I keep going back to this, everyone has a story or something that they need to overcome. And so that was another, I guess, like structure that we had for an idea. But I don't know, I think the point in this one is like some ideas are really simple. Like, and sometimes you have to ask those really sort of just like mundane questions to get people to get relaxed, and then you start going deeper and deeper, and then you get down to the dirt of things. But sometimes simpler is better.
Jim, you tell one long story on your show, but you break it up into like different scenes, different things that happened in that story, and you highlight it with music. It's a very defined structure that an audience can expect it to be the same way every week. Song, story, song, story, song. How does the structure of your show make it easy to follow along with? Like, why is that important? And then if you could just touch on how to tell a good story, because you're really, really good at it.
I think with everything, you have to be into it in the first place, and that will show. I can think of 100 stories, 100 more just now, and they all do relate to music. What was on in the background, what should have been on in the background, what can be on in the background to any story. Because now you have the benefit of it being able to remember. And I can tell a story and try to remember what was on in the background or what should have been on in the background because it fits what the story is. And now we have the gift of being able to create the podcast around a memory, and all memory for me leads to a couple of 3 songs with each story, and I could keep it going forever. I love it, and when I'm driving home now, I'm going to think, what were the 3 songs that could have been on when we were doing our launch podcast, and make it happen. This will be a show, and there'll be 3 songs on it that I'm thinking of right now.
Yeah, and I will add to that, it's important that whatever structure you come up with, and in your case, storytelling, songs that go along with it, needs to be something that's sustainable for a long period of time, because that transitions me to my next subject, getting listeners and sticking with it. There's a buzzword in podcasting called pod fading. Pod fading means you came up with a great idea, you started it, and then you stopped after a few months. So whatever your show structure is, whatever your idea is, needs to be sustainable, and you need to have enough content in your brain or with your research to make it last for a long time. Consistency, years on end, is one of the most important things when it comes to creating a successful podcast, probably creating a successful anything. And you know the old saying that it takes 7 years to be an overnight success. That's true of podcasting or almost any kind of content creation. In fact, some stats on this. So 50% of shows stop producing new episodes after a few months, and 80% of shows stop producing new episodes after a year. So look at how much you'll stand out just by doing your show for a year or more, and people look at your cast and see, oh, they have history as early as last week and going back a few years. That's automatic credibility. So consistency is key. One more statistic for you. Podcasts that have the most success, like the ones that are raking in $10,000 or more in advertising an episode, those are only 1% to 3% of total podcasts. It is definitely hard to make money in this business, and we're not even talking about that on this particular panel. That's a whole nother thing. There's no magic formula to building an audience. It takes a long time, and it's rare to have a really successful show. But that's the one advice we can give, is be as consistent with it as you can. So Bruce, let's go to you. How have you built an audience with your FM radio show, which is also available as a podcast in some formats, called Go Deep with Bruce Rave? And how do you plan to use some of the same strategies for Rave's Indie Radar?
I think a lot of the success I can attribute is what we're talking about. It's consistency, it's passion, right? I hear this a lot. People listen to my show and they go, yeah, you're really into that. You really like that music. Well, of course. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't do it. We don't typically do this for the money. And I also believe that, a lot of people will come to me, oh, new music sucks. And well, you're just not hearing it. You're not going to the right place. And I want an audience to know that I'm doing the work. I'm out there trying to find, if it's going to be on Snippet, maybe 4 songs out of more than 100 that are sent to me every week by the labels, narrowing it down. So that's what a lot of it is. And the difference, I think, between radio and podcasting, in radio, I'm inheriting an audience from whatever's before me. If we're talking about KXFM, I'm coming on after a classic rock show. And the show that follows me is an electronic show. So I might stack some more of my electronic stuff toward the end. Right? You're lucky you follow Chris Carter on Sirius XM, which is a great match. And I'm not that I don't have a great match, but got to keep these things in mind. With a podcast, they're coming to us for a specific reason, but in a way, it's not just we have to keep the standards that high because we need them to keep coming back. We want them to be happy that they chose to seek us out.
Jonathan, from a marketing perspective, from something catching fire and being popular, you're on the receiving end of pitches all the time for films at Hulu. So when someone is marketing their content, be it a movie or a podcast or whatever, what stands out to you? Is it something in the pitch? Is it something in the person, the way they presented it? Is it the content themselves? Is that all that matters? How does something stand out?
It's definitely a little bit of everything. I mean, a good story, poorly sold, is going to have trouble getting traction, but equally a bad story getting sold extremely well is going to have maybe more traction than it needs. When it comes to, I guess, in a broader sense, like how to sell a story or how to present a story that you've written, there's so many variables. There's the old classic thing in Hollywood. It's like some intern reads your script and he happened to be yelled at by his boss that morning and you're toast. You never really know what's going on in your audience. So the best thing you can do as an artist going outward is be your authentic, true self. And a person on the other end, like us in Snippet, is try to be as clear-minded and open to every single script that we get. So we try not to take our momentary biases into account when evaluating content, because we want to give each thing we get a fair chance. Somebody worked really hard to write this. They're passionate about their story. Let's be as fair as possible. And maybe we have an appetite. We're looking for an action drama, Appetite is a big thing for the strategy of an organization like Snippet. Maybe we see Cora Bay does really, really well. We need more period mysteries. People are writing in. We want to hear some family dramas. We'll do a family drama. So there's a lot of moving parts to all this stuff. Big answer to a big question. I hope that was okay.
And I will say we're covering some very broad overarching topics today. We're not talking specifics like what microphone to use or how to sell an ad on your show. That's for another time. But in these 45 minutes, we're just trying to do some broad ideas and concepts as it comes to podcasting. This is pretty much the last question, again, on the topic of making your show successful. This is to our two celebrities on the panel, to Jim and to Ariel. You guys have a bit of an advantage because of who you are, but you weren't always famous. You know, weren't always as successful as you are today. So I guess what I'm looking for here is, can you talk about what it took to become known in the first place? Was it all luck? Was it some luck and just being in the right place? Was it hard work? How do you get to where each of you are, if you could shed any light on that? And we'll start with Jim and with Ariel.
Robert Evans, my favorite quote of all times is, luck is opportunity meets preparation. And the Stray Cats were overnight sensations when we were 19 years old. We had already played 100 gigs kind of thing. So I do think that there is that you get an opportunity, but you're prepared for it. And that's what luck is. But I think there is right time, right place, but you got to be able to perform, do it. All the marbles are on 20 minutes, you kids? Okay, we this part we got. So I do think that you have to prepare and stick it out, but at the same time, be willing to take a chance, and all at the same time. And for a successful podcast, I do have to say, don't say and keep your ums smaller. Think it through, try to be fluid, but thinking at the same time. Nothing will turn me off more than
If I could add to that, it's okay to pause in the middle of a sentence.
Much better.
It's okay to pause. Ariel, if you could touch on fame and how does one get there?
So shucks, now I'm going to be thinking of that the whole time because I say and all that all the time.
Well, you made it anyway, so.
And I still have so much further that I want to go. I want to be Eskimo Oprah, and I want to do a lot more. But for me, my start was sort of on accident, and I just said yes to opportunities. I was playing basketball in Venice Beach, and a producer from Wipeout was like, "You are one odd, weird person. You should audition for the show." And I didn't even know what it was, and I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." And for me, it's always if someone gives you a chance to try something new, even if it's scary or you have no idea what you're doing. If I'm not gonna die, hopefully doing it, then sure, give me a shot. And so by doing Wipeout, it just opened a lot of doors. And it was right when Deadliest Catch came out, and my family's like a bunch of crazy, weird pilots. And I was like, my family is as interesting as these crazy crabbers. Let's do a show about us. And so we just kept plugging away, and we pitched it, and it got turned down a bunch of times, but I just kept going back and brought the networks cans of fish and beer. And after that, we were like, sweet, we sold it. But for me, it's saying yes and being kind to people, being prepared. It's just be professional and I just say yes to opportunities. And that has been the biggest gift to me, and getting past your fear of failing. You're going to screw up all the time. I do it every day, and I usually learn from it, and I've grown. And I look back on some of the stuff I've done, and I'm like, ooh, man, that was pretty dumb. But it's where I am now, and just hopefully I get to where I want to go and just meet cool people along the way. And what you said in the very beginning, have an experience. Like, the more experiences you have, the more your story will grow, the more you'll be able to offer to different people, and you'll be able to share your stories, and just say yes to experiences and try to have as many experiences in a day as you can. And so
Awesome. Great answer. Thank you. So I want to just give everybody an opportunity to say one more closing thought, and we'll just kind of go around the table as it pertains to podcasting or whatever you want to say. But I do want to say if anyone has a question and wants to just think of what that might be, we'll take a few minutes for that after they get done with their closing thoughts. And that includes people watching online. If you want to type in the chat and have a question, we'll have hopefully somebody translate that to us and we can answer it directed to any one of the panelists. So let's just go around just real quick, nice buttoned up thoughts, starting with Jonathan.
Sure. What's exciting about Snippet and especially audio dramas is this hearkening back to a very old school style of storytelling. You're sitting there and you're by the fire with your family, and there's a radio, there's the crackle of the fire and whatever. And it's all happening in your mind. It's stimulating your mind in such a way that isn't happening when you're watching a movie. It's more like reading a book, but with sound. And the second thing I'll say, and the last thing I'll say, what's so exciting about audio dramas is the sky is the limit. A writer can write whatever they want, and you can produce the sound and music, and boom, it's alive. You don't need to travel to a foreign country to film it. You don't need to get expensive special effects equipment. You just make it in the sound. And that provides, excuse me, such an incredible opportunity for creators like us.
Jim?
Theater of the mind, that's fantastic. I'm a huge fan, always my whole life, of radio drama. Even as a kid, Bruce, you would know, like the FM surpassed AM radio dramas, the beginning of it all, really popular radio, and I'm a fan of it and always have been. And to be able to create new theater of the mind is a great opportunity, and I'm all the way in. I really dig it. And to link it through music that I love is just bonus. Thanks for the opportunity here at Snippet. We dig it, man.
Thanks, Jim. All right, Bruce.
I'm just going to summarize a couple things that I find most important. We just really, those who are getting into the podcast world, about being consistent and get right to the point. As Tyler was talking about, a lot of podcasts lose listeners because people take too long to get to what it's all about. And be, everything we've been talking about, really, be passionate, find something that's unique.
Ariel?
I think the biggest one for new podcasters is don't be afraid to let your ideas evolve. Like, you come up with an idea like we did, but if a new idea comes into your head, like, it's okay to change your vision. And I think that's been good. It's not a bad thing to, like, take a different course. It's actually exciting. So don't be afraid to change your mind or to let new ideas, like, come in. And also, when you're doing stuff like this, don't wear a sweater or, like, something, because you sweat. It always happens. I'm just like, wear a tank top. But yeah, that's my, like, 2 cents.
Awesome. Do we have any questions from the immediate audience and maybe a couple online? I'm going to come grab this microphone, and then if anybody else wants to chime in from the audience, we can as well. We'll send it to you, sir.
My question is for Ariel and Jonathan, for all the creators that are out there that might have something that they're really excited about. How do they pitch it? You pitch something to a network, you get people pitching things to you, but can you explain to maybe the creators out there how they pitch something or who they pitch it to?
Sure. I mean, it's really a mixed bag. Every organization has their own process. At some companies, it has to be represented by an agent. And you have to have representation to get through the door. Some companies, just wide open, here's our email address, send us stuff. Some organizations have people that are out there looking for it. So there isn't, like, one whole straight answer. It behooves you to try to get in touch with the organization and figure out exactly what their process is. I know that's kind of a non-answer because it varies so wildly through the industry, but being inquisitive and not giving up is really the best way to figure out where to go.
You'd mentioned scripts for podcasts. So instead of sending somebody the recording, the produced show, you like to receive something scripted out on paper?
Yes, for Snippet specifically, we don't need the whole thing made. We don't even necessarily need a whole episode even made. What we want to see at Snippet really is a treatment, which is maybe the whole idea for your show in a few pages or one page. And if we like that, then we say, why don't you outline the first 2 or 3 episodes of this? It's a back and forth process. And I actually don't know what our current send us ideas here email is, but if you know it, you can say it later. Did that answer that question?
Sure did.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from our audience in attendance? Otherwise, I'm happy to summarize. All right. So as we said a minute ago, there is a lot to discuss in the world of podcasting. Mic technique, getting advertisers on your show, monetization, and much more. We didn't cover that today, but assuming this is successful, we will continue doing things like this and podcasts like this that are instructional. We believe we know a little bit about all of that stuff at Snippet, so we aim to be a disruptive force in the podcast industry. And here's to answer your question. If you believe you have a great show idea or anything at all that's within the format of 20 minutes or less like we like to do, you can reach out to our team at snippet.fm, and we'd be happy to talk to you about a prospective partnership opportunity. Or if you're simply a podcast listener or consumer, we hope you enjoy our original lifestyle, music, and scripted shows, again, at snippet.fm, and don't forget to subscribe. So thank you, Jonathan Katz, Slim Jim Phantom, Bruce Rave, Ariel Tweto. I'm Tyler Russell McCusker, and we thank you very much for attending or watching this webinar, and we look forward to hearing you on the air. Thank you so much.